the bailiffs, actually, they've been roughing up people who've been defending Tara's house.
Welcome back to Real Estate Mindset. Today's video is going to be absolutely bonkers. Now, the data is in and the eviction crisis around America is getting much worse. And in fact, the unaffordability is starting to absolutely devastate many of the renters around the United States. Now, this entire situation with the eviction crisis has been inflamed by both long-term rental investors and short-term rental investors. And so today we're going to go over the Eviction Lab updated information and updated reports so I can show you guys just how bad the eviction crisis is in specific metro areas. Now I'm going to show you guys a map of the filing rate. Then I'm going to show you guys the filing rate relative to the average. Now some of these areas and tracts and subdivisions are showing over 700% increase in eviction filings as of July 1st of 2023. And think about that for a second, you guys, a 700% increase in eviction. So there's no question we are seeing the consumer starting to unravel in all sectors of the economy. And my question is if this is what we're seeing in the eviction, people are struggling with the affordability in the rent, what are we going to see when it comes to home mortgages? What are we going to see when people start to wake up and start to figure out, especially these recent homeowners, when they start to figure out that the reality of their situation is they are now trapped and chained to their house. The four cities we'll look at today is Las Vegas, Fort Worth, Tampa, and Phoenix. After the Metro Report deep dive, we're also going to go into two additional tragedies in the rental market. The first one being absolutely greedy landlords that are basically forcing certain tenants to move out of their properties as a result of insane rent increases. The reality is this is a major problem. And then we'll briefly look at another massive problem, which is deadbeat squatters and the squatter rights. To me, it's still shocking that there's even squatter rights to begin with, but we'll briefly look at that. We have so much going on in the housing market right now, not to mention the 2 and the 10-year inversion of the yield, which is basically is telling us the money is fleeting to safety. It's basically a sign from our forefathers telling us the pain is coming and it's not here yet. And that topped with the M2 money supply, us basically losing money in our economy at the fastest rate since the Great Depression, I really think we need to start paying attention to what's going on in America so that as consumers ourselves and Americans ourselves, we can properly prepare. Awareness, you guys, even though it might be scary, is a good thing. And don't worry, you guys, I'm not going to ask you to like this video, to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'm not going to ask you to please shoot me a comment below. But let's get started. Let's start with Las Vegas. Las Vegas is going through some really wicked things right now, especially when it pertains to STRs or short-term rentals. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring up Las Vegas. But also, you guys, Las Vegas right now is going through an absolute Armageddon right now with evictions. And if I scroll up to the top here, you guys can see right now on average, Las Vegas is sitting at 170% of average. So 70% of average with a total of a 16% eviction filing rate. You guys, that's absolutely shocking. But when I scroll down here, and let me show you this map, it gets this picture of the eviction crisis gets a little clearer. So the first thing I'm going to show you guys is basically the filing rate, essentially the total amount of renters in that area that have had an eviction filed against them. So the total amount of renters, take a look. So starting with this census tract 78, you guys can see, and think about this for a second here. If you want to invest in Las Vegas for some reason, good luck. The consumers, the renters are not paying their rent. And I will argue that the one thing that's propping up this housing market right now in the economy is the lack of defaults. As defaults increase just like this, the economy is going to fall apart faster and faster and faster. But look at this, guys. Census tract 78, 35 somehow in Las Vegas, 35% of the renters have had an eviction filed against them. How can we explain that outside of the fact that it's just not sustainable? A 35% eviction rate. Oh my gosh. And that's not the worst of it. When I scroll down here to census tract 54.36, you can see that nearly 40% of all renters have had an eviction filed against them. And that's all over Las Vegas. Look at this, you guys. This is one of the worst census tracts that I was able to find. Again, census tract 2962 in Las Vegas. A whopping, shocking 77.42% of renters have had eviction filed against them. Is that not shocking? Again, right here, 44%, 30%, 33%, 32%. Another high one at 60.9% of renters. I mean, it is so bad right now in Las Vegas, y'all. I mean, there's no question there is an eviction Armageddon going on right now, right at this very minute in Las Vegas. But let's look at what it is relative to the average. Now, the average is calculated based on how many evictions took place prior to COVID or the pandemic. This is really important to understand because this will show us how much worse things are now that we've gone through COVID. So take a look at this, you guys. Census tract 78 is up 94% from average. So 194% of average. That's shocking. Let's look at another place right here. 147% eviction filings above average, triple digit increases. 99% above average, 130% above average. Let's go to downtown a little bit more. 150% above average, 194% above average, 191. I mean, it is wild right now in Las Vegas in Henderson County. Look at right here, you guys, census tract 5712. 263% eviction filing above the average. This entire situation is inflamed by short-term rentals. You guys can see, this is Las Vegas. I'm going to AirDNA. You can see that there are almost 10,000 units, SFR units, entire homes. I'm not counting private rooms, but there are 10,000 units in Las Vegas right now, short-term rentals. Most of them are illegal. Las Vegas has already banned most of the short-term rentals. You guys, this problem here is aggravating the situation because it's removing inventory. It's removing rentals from the market and making things much more unaffordable for the locals. So now we're taking a look at Fort Worth, Texas. You may be wondering why I have Fort Worth even referenced in this video. His reason is Dallas just banned pretty much every short-term rental from residential zoning. So that's going to create additional supply in both Dallas and the Fort Worth area. When we first look at this, it's only showing us that the eviction filings only, right? 18% above average with a total eviction rate of 10%. But when we scroll down here and we really dig in, we can see that some areas especially are in extremely bad shape. So we're at the filing rate right here, and let's see how Fort Worth is doing. You can see that this census tract 31.65% of the renters have had an eviction filed against them. That is huge, you guys. And look at how big that area is. A 31% eviction rate. Holy smokes, that's insane. Also, northern Fort Worth is at 23.9%. Neighboring tract at 12% as well. When we go to some of the bad areas right here, this doesn't even make sense to me, you guys. This is showing us how important those COVID rent assistance payments were. And as soon as those COVID rent assistance payments stopped, people couldn't pay their bills. 91%, you guys. Census tract 1050.06, 91%. Again, 91% of renters have had eviction filed against them in census tract 1050. How is that not an eviction Armageddon? How are more people not talking about this? Consumers can't hang on much longer. Now, when we go downtown Fort Worth, 11%, it's not as bad. Now, most of this area is ran by Airbnbs. You can see, again, downtown, these white areas, super low eviction. But again, it's just so interesting to me how some of these areas have super high concentrations of evictions and some of them do not. And I believe, again, one of the reasons that is the Airbnb. But let me show you guys the eviction rates relative to the average. So relative to the average, starting with downtown Fort Worth, we're sitting at an increase of 244%. You guys hearing me on this one? Tell me unaffordability is not out of control right now. Tell me consumers are strong. You can't convince me of that. Now, I know that we're looking at specific areas, but holy smokes, you guys, again, 607% above average in that census tract. Absolutely shocking to me. Let's look over by Arlington, 187% above average. When we go over to AirDNA, we can see there's not as many STR rentals as Las Vegas, probably because people are getting smart out this way. But nevertheless, you guys, Airbnb is a problem. I already know that, but there's roughly 1,400 homes right now being rented out for STRs in the Fort Worth area. When I go to Phoenix, we can also see just how bad the evictions are. I think Phoenix is absolutely going to melt down. I think the one thing Phoenix is lacking right now from an absolute devastating housing market crash is banning short-term rentals. Short-term rentals out in Phoenix right now, it's shocking to me. I don't know why so many STRs are needed in the middle of a desert. To me, it's a loophole. It's putting hotels in neighborhoods. Phoenix is sitting at 27% above average with a total of 13% eviction filing rate. But again, when we scroll down here and when we go to the map and we click the filing rate right here, we can really get a better picture of just how bad the Phoenix area is. So again, filing rate, we click filing rate. Look at some of these areas, you guys. 24% of renters eviction, 28% of renters eviction. By Glendale, 24% of renters eviction. That's 1 in 4 houses. Again, this area, 22%. Let's see downtown, 27% of renters, y'all, eviction. How can people invest in Phoenix? Probably one of the only ways landlords are making money right now is Airbnbs, because generally the profit is much more with Airbnbs. Now let's see what this is relative to the average. Evictions are 132% above average. So triple digit increase going to downtown. We're at almost triple digits at 97% increase in eviction filings. Holy smokes. When we go downtown, it's up 340% relative to the average. 340%. And think about this, you guys. That's in what? 3 years? And we started from zero. We had so much money being kicked in. There's a total of 6,600 units right now that are being rented out as short-term rentals. And let me zoom in here. Let me show you guys what I mean. I mean, why are there so many short-term rentals here? There's nothing to do here. I mean, why so many? There's a problem. Just in my opinion, there is a problem with STRs. You can't have all of this in single-family residential neighborhoods. There's not even an ocean. I mean, there's a little river here, but I mean, you know, it is what it is. I didn't want to leave Florida out, so we're going to talk about Tampa. Now, Tampa is sitting at an average of 16% above pre-COVID, sitting at a 6% only eviction rate. But again, you guys, let's see just how bad it actually is by scrolling down to the map and clicking the actual filing rate. Tampa is unraveling rapidly. In fact, a lot of places in Florida are unraveling very, very rapidly. And how could they not? The unaffordability is not based on fundamentals. Everyone knows this by now, I think. But when we look, we can see that some of the areas are getting pretty out of control. We can see 18% of renters eviction filing here. We could see in this track 17%, and we can see some epicenters right here kind of blowing up. 15% eviction, 200% eviction. So if it's me, I'm not going to invest over in this area because everyone's getting evicted here. I'm not sure why that is. I would assume it has something to do with the hurricane. Up north here, we're sitting at 17.9. So it's not as bad as some of the areas, but it's definitely showing us it's getting worse. And if you look here, again, this is right next to the ocean, 35% eviction rate. 35% eviction rate. Why are people renting houses they can't afford? This is crazy. 12% right here, 11%. So it goes down, but there are some pretty bad problem areas in Tampa right now. Overall, it's relatively mild, but again, when we hone into some of these problem areas, it's pretty shocking. And more than likely, you guys, this is just going to grow and expand. Now let's look at what it is relative to the average. Now relative to the average, TREC 73 is 100%. So it's triple digit growth. When we look over here, again, triple digit growth at 109% relative to the average. Down here, 100%. So you guys see what I mean? When we really look at this data, we can see just how bad it is, but we need to compare the data. This census tract has 276% increase from average. Holy smokes, you guys. This one's at 155%, another triple digit. So many tracts with triple digit eviction growth. This one's sitting at 168%. People, y'all, are suffering right now. Going back over to AirDNA, and what I'm really trying to point out here is we got a massive investing problem in America. I mean, look at, again, all of these STRs. So in Tampa, there's roughly 5,200 homes that are being used for short-term rentals. Now, if that inventory went to long-term rentals or even went up for sale, obviously, you guys, that would help. But as of right now, I don't believe Tampa is doing anything to prohibit, ban, or re-regulate STRs. So in other words, the housing market right now is an absolute mess. It's absolutely toxic. And the question is what can we do about it? And the reality is a lot of times the only thing we can do about it is improve our own personal situation. So if you're on the sideline, like I'm on the sideline, I am stuck renting right now. I cannot believe I'm saying that, but I'm not just stuck renting, okay? As I'm renting, I'm also increasing my purchasing power, my credit, I'm eliminating all debt, and overall, I'm becoming an expert in the areas that I want to purchase in. So renting at this current time, in my opinion, is actually a good thing, so long as we are not overextending ourselves. Which brings me to the next part of this video. Overwhelmingly greedy landlords. There are landlords out there that are raising rent, some of them by double, in order to kick out tenants. You guys, this is a massive problem around America. So there's two thoughts here. One of the thoughts is the government shouldn't intervene and tell us what we should do with our property. The other concept here is all of these investors are ruining it for people that just want a roof over our head. So I'm not sure what side of the coin you're on. Maybe you can comment below, but let's listen to a couple videos on landlord greed.
I tried everything. I called all the housing, affordable income housing, full. I called different places to live. If I've had an eviction, even if I had $1 million, they wouldn't take me.
Maria Jackson is one of many who was evicted from her home due to the effects of the pandemic. The 79-year-old worked as a massage therapist in Las Vegas, Nevada for nearly 2 decades. But when COVID-19 landed in March 2020, it wiped out her business. She sold her car, applied for food stamps, and dipped into her $1,000 in savings to pay her nearly $1,100 rent on her one-bedroom apartment.
If you were impacted by COVID, you could apply for rental assistance. So I applied. I never heard from them. Months going by. 2 or 3 months went by before I actually spoke to anybody.
She is one of the many Americans being evicted from their homes as earlier pandemic rental protections run out. Filings are running higher than ever seen in the before times in many cities. In several places, it's more than 50% higher, according to the Eviction Lab, which tracks filings in 10 states. Among the hardest hit places, Houston, Las Vegas, Providence, and Minneapolis-St. Paul, where evictions were 55% above average in April. Still, that was down from March, when filings were 106% higher. The latest data mirrors trends that started last year, when the Eviction Lab found landlords filed nearly 970,000 evictions in 2022, an increase of nearly 80% compared to the year before. By December, eviction filings were nearly back to pre-pandemic rates. Pair that with skyrocketing rents, up a little over 5% from a year ago and 30.5% from 2019, according to real estate company Zillow. There also aren't many places to go for those who have been displaced, with the National Low Income Housing Coalition estimating there's a shortage of 7.3 million affordable units in the country.
So first of all, we need rent stabilization. The other thing we deeply need is eviction reform in this state. We need to address the fact that our evictions process is not friendly to renters.
The federal government and many states issued moratoriums during the pandemic that put evictions on hold, but all but a handful of cities have ended them. There was also $46.5 billion in federal emergency rental assistance that helped tenants pay rent and funded other tenant protections. Much of that has either been spent, and calls for additional resources have largely fallen flat in Congress. While some housing courts are still snagged up with cases due to the pandemic, and they're filling up, ensnaring people like Maria.
Senior citizens and disabled folks living on fixed incomes are significantly impacted by this because their rent goes up, but their checks are not going up. Their vouchers, the Social Security, those are not increasing.
And because of this, more and more people are shacking up together. Jackson now rents a $400 a month room in the home of one of her clients outside of the town where she used to live.
Personally, y'all, I try to have compassion for people. I try to have empathy in people. I mean, she got wrapped up in COVID. Does that make her a bad person? I don't think it does. So tell me really what, your opinion is. Do you guys think that we should have some type of a rental protection problem to potentially help people on a fixed income? Or do you think that's just giving them free money and they don't deserve it. Tell me what you think. Now I'm going to show you guys an additional video on what's going on in Harris County, which is basically Houston, which is my own metro area. You guys, I didn't go into Houston, but Houston has one of the worst eviction crises in the country. It's actually sitting at number 2 for total units right now. Take a listen.
Tonight, Action 13 is taking a look at what many are calling an eviction crisis in Harris County.
Yeah, with rents rising, landlords have filed nearly 60,000 evictions just this year.
And as Derek Lewis explains, the situation getting worse since the start of the pandemic.
According to January Advisors, a data science firm, since March 2020, the start of the pandemic, landlords have filed more than 110,000 evictions in Harris County.
It's a massive problem.
Commissioner Rodney Ellis explains what's causing what he calls a growing crisis.
The pandemic is a part of the reason why we've had so many evictions. Also because of the lack of legal representation for tenants.
On Tuesday, commissioners set aside $4 million for legal services to help Harris County renters facing eviction. As of September 26, the Houston-Harris County Emergency Rental Assistance Program has used more than $300 million to help families struggling during the pandemic. While the money has made a difference for tens of thousands of families, Commissioner Ellis says the growing crisis will not change until more people can afford their rent.
When we do more to try to get a handle on affordable housing, so many people simply cannot afford the cost of housing.
That is having a ripple effect on landlords.
Landlords need to get paid rent.
Howard Bookstaff is with the Houston Apartment Association, a group made up of landlords and real estate managers. He says some people have not been able to catch up on rent since the pandemic.
What was before 1 or 2 months pre-pandemic that warranted enough's enough, we're going to go forward on the eviction. Now we're seeing 5 to 10 months and even more in delinquency.
Bookstaff says most landlords make evictions the last resort and gives advice to tenants.
Communicate with your landlord. Always communicate where you are, what your circumstances are. Show an effort that you are going to make your rent payments.
But check this out. Now, this chart right here shows the availability based on cost, and there are not many options when it comes to anything less than $1,000. Just 1 in 5 Houston apartments cost less than $1,000. The most availability is for apartments costing about $2,100 or more.
And the reality here, the crisis is unaffordability. And what the man just mentioned is the fact that they have a whole bunch of inventory per se, a whole bunch of inventory for the higher end apartments. But when it comes to the lower end apartments right now, there's basically none. So when you take people's ability to just live comfortably, they're not going to pay their bills because they're not going to be able to, because again, it's not based on fundamentals and it's not sustainable. And this is, again, before the recession has even started. On one hand, perhaps something should be figured out on how to stop some of these absolutely greedy landlords. But now on the other hand, what do we do about the absolutely ridiculous squatter laws? Because you guys, the reality is you've got to also somewhat, for some of them, you got to think of some of the landlords. Not all landlords are horrible people, okay? Not all. Some, yes, but not all. So what do we do? Take a listen to some of the stuff that's been going on around the nation when it pertains to squatter rights. So we're going to flip this coin now.
Us today at a Detroit tiny home as bailiffs tried to evict a woman who refused to leave. The saga between Tara Brown and Cass Community Social Services has been playing out for months, and today the situation finally came to a head. Victor Williams was there as things turned violent. Victor.
Yeah, Kimberly, talk about an intense situation. You had dozens of protesters that were refusing to let this woman be evicted, but at the same time, you had court officers refusing to let her stay.
We're going in. You're in the way.
Things turned chaotic between protesters and court officers during an eviction on Detroit's west side, with a few dozen officers from DPD watching on.
The bailiffs, actually, they've been roughing up people who've been defending Tara's house.
Tara Brown is the one being put out of her tiny home through a court-ordered eviction. She claims it's all because she spoke out against her landlord, Reverend Fowler, with Cass Community Social Services, better known as CCSS.
This is what a home defense looks like. And this is what landlords can expect when they go to retaliate against tenants and throw them out. This is a lie. She told people that she was giving us tiny houses.
Protesters from multiple organizations, including Detroit Eviction Defense, have taken it on themselves to make sure Tara stays in her home. And although all of her belongings were taken out, some protesters are refusing to accept that even now.
We need to keep people in their homes right now. There is no housing available for people in Detroit.
Feeling confident about fighting back, and we're not done. We're just getting started.
I think at the least we could say is that situation is sad, and it's probably sad for all of the parties involved. On one hand, you have renters that won't leave, that were evicted properly, but on the other hand, where are they going to go? They can't afford to move anywhere. And the fact that it was done through church and a reverend, I'm like, oh my gosh, to me, again, you guys, this is showing us people are hurting and something needs to change. One more video. And this one is pretty crazy.
Across the country, squatters are illegally entering houses, and they're staying there while they're facing little consequences. In Texas, a home was invaded by a squatter who was a fourth grade teacher and her family, resulting in months-long eviction battle. They were finally ordered to leave the home last week. And joining us now is the authorized seller of that property, the real estate agent, Shaniqua Garrett. Good morning, Shaniqua.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing well. So tell us the story, because I know you told our producers this is the third set of squatters.
Yes, so we've had several squatters in this home. These squatters have been in the property the longest. We had gotten a call from a neighbor that there was a moving truck in front of the home, and this was after we had already had the property rekeyed. So I called the cops. I got over to the property, but by the time I got there, the moving truck was already driving away. And so they were already moved into the home. By the time the cops got there, they waived a fake lease, and the lease allowed them to stay in the home. So I had to figure out how to navigate the system to get them out. So that took several months.
It's a beautiful house. I can understand why someone would want to live there, and to live for free would be just such a blessing. But you can't do that. It is illegal. You went to the judge, and the judge said this is a civil matter, not a criminal matter. So how'd you get him out?
So we had to file paperwork, pay a lot of fees. I had to find this lady's name. The house was never for sale. I mean, for lease, it was for sale. And so this lease really had nothing to do with us as the sellers of the home. So, I had to put on my investigative hat.
It's crazy. Shaniqua, I want to ask about this teacher and the mother of this family who did this. Did she have a spouse? Is she a single mom and she lived there with her kids? What's her story? How'd she explain this?
Well, we didn't talk very much. She does have a husband. She had 2 young children. Obviously, she's a school teacher. I'm not really sure what possessed her to do this, but
how can she? Is she going to keep her job? The average school teacher salary in the state of Texas is $55,000. She could find something where her family could live, safely under a roof. Is she going to face consequences at work? How can you teach school and teach fourth graders and teach them that this is something that you should be doing?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what's going to happen moving forward. I guess we'll just see that play out. But there was a dual income. It was a dual income household. But there could have been prior evictions to prevent her from getting safe housing.
This situation is crazy, you guys. I mean, both sides of the fence, the entire situation is crazy. And the reality is if you want to blame someone, we should probably be blaming the government and the Federal Reserve for putting us in this situation. And let me ask you guys this, okay? Again, remember, all of this is happening on the front end of a recession. We haven't even started the recession. The yield inversion hasn't even reinverted yet. What do you guys think is going to happen when these recent homeowners wake up and realize that they're locked into $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 mortgage payments? I'm going to tell you guys what's going to happen. The same thing that's happening with evictions right now. It's eventually going to catch up to people that actually own property, because the unaffordability, you guys, is even worse when it comes to owning a home. And also think about this, these squatters and these people out here struggling. The video we just listened to, those squatters was from a 4th grade teacher that had a husband and 2 kids. People are absolutely going crazy right now as a result of being devastated for being flipped upside down on their head. That's what COVID did. That's what the lockdowns did. It flipped everyone upside down on their heads. And now what the government's trying to do is they're trying to normalize everything. Are you out of your mind? Are you kidding? You can't normalize what wasn't normal. And we see that in evictions. Now, other than that, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this report. I hope it gave you guys some additional perspective. Maybe we should be cautious if we're out there investing in real estate. But either way, you guys, if you are investing in real estate, I do wish you luck and I hope you win.